So, very warm welcome to this afternoon session in our pedagogy workshop 1 on E210.1x. We've been having some very interesting discussions and presentations this morning in the second cycle, and we will now continue the discussions in the second cycle and presentations. As I said, it's very important for all of us to participate in these discussions. It is the participation that completes the pedagogical workshop, not simply the presentation. We all need to critically review the presentations that are being made, both from a technical point of view and from a pedagogical point of view. So with these few opening remarks, I now, without further ado, invite the next group to make a presentation. And I shall make more remarks as we go along. So I'm very happy to invite now group 7, I believe, to make its presentation.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, all.
Very good afternoon, madam. Yeah.
Today's topic is convolving continuous signals.
Yes.
My group members are Tanmay Majumdar, Sheta Uday Patil, Punit Kumar Vivi, Varshe Ratna Parkhe, and myself presenting this. But sir, I could not find any of my group member. So I have.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So I really appreciate your taking the effort to make this presentation. I think all of us
Yes.
must appreciate that. Yes.
Yes, yes, sir. No one is there. So I don't know whether my presentation is up to the mark, whether it is correct.
I'm sure it will be.
I know because I have not got any suggestions from my team members. So that is the point.
I'm sure your presentation yesterday was excellent. So I'm sure there'll be no doubt about its excellence today as well.
Actually, if I get some suggestions from my team members, that would have been better.
Yes,
so that is,
I agree. I'm very unpleasantly surprised they're not here. Anyway, let's go ahead. You've made, so we appreciate your effort.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Today my objective is to explain convolution of continuous time signal. In yesterday's presentation, we have found that continuous time signals are made up of infinite number of impulses, and today we will see how the two signals of such same kind can be convolved together. So to know that, first we have to know what is a convolution. A convolution is an integral that expresses the amount of overlap of one function as it is shifted over another function. So it is a blend of one function with another. So let me show some small video so that everyone can understand. I wanted to play this. So this is I wanted to show that a signal when shifted over, there are two signals. One is fixed and another is shifting over the other. So sometimes this is the moment when there is a maximum overlap and the function is shifting. So
very nice. It's a very nice demonstration. Yes.
Another one also same. So this.
Yes, this is right.
So this is here the two signals. They are square pulses, and they are one is moving, one is getting shifted over the another, and the green line is presenting the converged output.
Very
the green line, correct. It is the converged output.
Very nice, very beautiful.
So it is basically, convolution is basically a step-by-step interaction. Step-by-step interaction. Now, coming to a very small mathematics part of it. So output of a continuous time convolution can be expressed as x1t star x2t, and it is different, slightly different from multiplication, and it is expressed by this star. And the equation of it is equal to my integration minus infinity to plus infinity x1 lambda and x2 t minus lambda. It is lambda is a variable, and it is for all lambda, and done for all the value of t over the time axis. The signal x2t is being shifted over this x1 lambda x1t. So
Yes.
convolution is commutative, and this is the equation for convolution. And we also have to know that convolution is commutative. That means x1 convolved with x2 will give the same result if x2 convolved with x1. So let us consider in this x2t, there is a term t minus lambda, that is shifting by lambda amount. So this is this t minus lambda. Let us take it as alpha, and so lambda will be given by t minus alpha. And as lambda tends to infinity, then alpha tends to minus infinity. All of you can understand that. And as the lambda tends to minus infinity, alpha tends to plus infinity. Now this portion, this part, we just substitute in this above equation, this equation. So this equation, when t minus lambda is replaced by alpha, then lambda will be replaced by t minus alpha, and you can see that integration limits are different. It is from plus infinity to minus infinity, and this is integrated over minus d alpha, d alpha. So we know that this minus and this limit, when they come together, we can change the limit from minus infinity to plus infinity, and it is positive. This gives some negative, and this is negative, so together it will give positive. And so our expression becomes x1 t minus alpha, x2 alpha, and d alpha. And this is again a equation for convolution, where this lambda is replaced by alpha. So here we can write, here we can see that x2 is fixed and x1 is shifted. So this is x2t converged with x1t for every value of t. So both by these both equations, we are getting same converged output. Now, sir has given an example of a train entering to platform. It is a very appropriate real-time example that I have to have slightly picturized it, so that all of you can understand that this is a platform, and this is a platform. It is treated as a square pulse of strength B, and this is the train, and it is represented by x2t, and this is the train, that is x1t. It is represented by a square pulse of width T1, capital T1, and it is its concentration is A. So its strength is A. And all of us know that the length of the train is always smaller than the length of the platform. So that's why we have in this equation, in this thing, we x2 alpha, this represents, I have taken that it represents the platform part, and this x1 t minus alpha, this will be representing the train part. So here.
Yes.
And since I have actually what it will do, the passengers in the train will interact with the people on the platform, and they will basically interact with each other. Each passenger will interact with with each person in the platform, and their passenger density, since it is a continuous time system, the passenger density is to be taken very high, very high, so that all the points can be taken into consideration. Now we have taken that the length of the platform is more than the length of the train. That is, and another one I have taken for generalization, for the ease of calculation, that A is equal to B equal to 1. That is, all of them are having unit strength. All these pulses, they are having unit strength. Now in the platform is represented by x2t, and it is given by a square pulse of width capital T2, and a train is represented by x1t. It is represented by this square pulse. Now here, so we can, so again we come to this figure where we can say that handshaking of the people starts when this train enters into the platform. That means when this train is at the point T2, then the handshaking begins, and when the last point of the train just go out of this point T2 plus capital T2, then the train leaves the platform. So then the handshaking ends. Now in this equation, come to this equation again. This is a constant signal. That means constant platform. This signal is kept fixed, and this x1 is being shifted. Now x1 t minus lambda, if it's we have seen that it was in the last slide, we have seen that it is started from t1. So what is in this case, it will be x1 t1. If it is x1 t1, in that case t minus lambda is equal to t1, and lambda will be given by t minus t1. So that's why this point is represented by t minus t1 point. And when this train ends at t1 plus capital T1, so in that case lambda will be represented by t minus t1 plus capital T1. So the last point of the train will be represented by t minus small t1 plus capital T1, and it is shifted over the over this platform with respect to the platform with the variable lambda. Now we can see these two are having pulse amplitude 1, and this train starts moving towards the platform, and in that case three cases may arise. Case 1, the train is entering the platform. Train is entering to the platform. So in that case, what will happen? When the train enters this point T2, the convolution, this handshaking process starts, and for so the interval of convolution will be this interval of convolution will be, this is the point T2, and T minus T1 to T2. This is the interval. Can you see the highlighted white portion? This
Yes.
portion, the convolution occurs between the people are in the between the platform pulse with the train pulse. So the interval will be T minus T1 minus T2. So this will be the interval of convolution, and our time, and it will be it will be, so time should be where less than T1 plus T2 should be less than T, less than equal to T1 plus T2 plus capital T1, because the train width is capital T1. Now in case 2, when the train is on the platform, so when the train is over on the platform, then the interval of convolution will be same as the width of the train. That means we know that the width of the train is T1. So this T1, this part will be the for this T1 in so this width will all over this train with T1 will shift all over the platform, and all over the platform, and point by point interaction will occur. So in that case, it will be T1 plus T2 plus T1 will be less than T1 plus T2 plus capital T2. And the third case is that the train is about to leave the platform. So in that case, this white highlighted portion, this point T minus T1 plus capital T1, when it will be equal to T2 plus capital T2, then the train fully leaves the platform. When T minus T1 greater than, so T minus T1 should be greater than T2 plus capital T2. So T will be greater than T1 plus T2 plus capital T2. And when this T minus T1 plus capital T1 is less than equal to T2 plus capital T2, then T will be greater than T1 plus T2. Oh, sorry, here. T should be less than T1 plus T2, small t1 plus small t2 plus t1 plus t2. These are mathematically, all of you can understand. This is very simple, that the full, when this last point of the train, that is T minus small t1 and capital T1, this is equal to small t2 plus capital T2, then the train is, there will be no overlapping at all. So the full train has covered the full platform once. So these three are the cases: case 1, case 2, and case 3. This from the first case, we have seen that the when the train is outside this point, then there is no convolution. That means no, there is the value of convolution will be 0. Now the train starts entering to the platform. So in that case, the overlap increases. In that case, the overlap is increasing. So all of you can see this overlap is increasing. And at the point T1 plus T2 plus T1, that is the when the width of the train is covered, then the total, then this overlap is constant, and it will be constant as the width of the width of the platform. Since we know that the width of the platform is T2, so for the width T2, this will remain constant. And then the train, at this point, the train starts leaving, so the overlap starts reducing. And when the train, last point of the train leaves the platform, then the overlap is equal to 0. There is no interaction between the passengers with the person present on the platform. So these are the three cases where this convolution has occurred for two square pulses. We have taken the platform as a square pulse and the train as a square pulse of the amplitude unity. But since it may happen that at first we have taken it A and B, so if it is A, it may happen that these two pulses are of different amplitude. So in that case, their strength will be, the converged signal will have the strength AB into multiplied by this T1 for this constant portion, and the other two portion will be the function of time with this constant AB. These are the two concentrations of two pulses. Now we can also have the signals which are not square pulse, which are triangular pulse or any other kind of pulse. So not pulse, any other kind of signal. So when they are converged, there will be some other pattern. So that pattern will be we can get after integrating those equations. So first we have to find out the signal equation of the signal, and then we integrate it with respect to the other, and then we can get that converged signal. So all of us know that this and another thing is that if they are of square pulse, then only can it is very easy that to find out the converged signal, it will be trapezoidal. When it will be trapezoidal, there is another thing must be remembered, that one signal width must be less than the others. That means here we have taken that T1 is less than T2. So that's why it is coming like a trapezoid. But if suppose the platform is of same size as the train, so in that case, what will happen in this figure? We can also observe that if T1 is equal to T2, then it will become a triangle. This constant portion will not be there. So only this gradual increase up to the maximum strength, up to the maximum point, then from there it will gradually reduce. So the convolution result will be a triangle. And all of us know that with the help of this convolution function, we can find out, and if it is converged with if an impulse response is converged with the input signal of any system, of LTI system, in that case we can get the output from the equation. Now this application area of convolution are there are lot of applications. I am highlighting 2-3. It is image processing. In case of image processing, in case of edge detection, there are square filters that are, we know that image is a two-dimensional array, monochromatic image, and over this 2D filter, if this some filters are moving, then we can detect the age or whatever we want to gather from the image, whatever information we can gather, we can use this convolution. Then we can synthesize a customized output pattern by employing convolution, like audio processing. In case of audio processing, sometimes reverberation is added with the help of convolution. And nowadays, all of us know that there are convolution neural network, which is becoming very popular in deep learning. There also convolution is used for artificial intelligence, and there are a lot of other applications. And I think in the wavelet transform also, this concept of convolution is used, and this wavelet transform I have used for finding out features from some biometric signals. So I think these are all the application of convolution. So thank you very much, and giving me such opportunity to say about this convolution to all of you. I don't know whether I am made justifying, I have justified or not, but thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much, madam. Very well presented. So I can see that you were really into what you were presenting, and I was very happy to see the beautiful way in which you illustrated the train platform analogy. I would strongly encourage all of you to use this train platform analogy for explaining convolution. I think madam also beautifully explained how that train platform analogy is extremely useful to bring a graphic picture of convolution in front of the student. Is that right, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
And it is like I got it from your presentation only, but it is very much useful to me. I will also go to my students and talk to them with this example, because it's very, very important. Very, very lucidly I can explain.
Yes.
And this experience, everyone has got this experience of observing moving train.
Yes.
So that is
very good. Thank you so much, madam. So now, I must definitely appreciate this presentation, and we must particularly appreciate Professor Nandita Sanyal, because she has had to work all alone. It's a pity that her partners did not join her. And we can now have some observations or discussion on her presentation. So any observations or anything that people would like to share in regard to this presentation? Okay, so if there are no points to be shared, we'll move on to the next one, group 8.
Yes, sir. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, please. Yes, Professor Namrata Pai.
Yes. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody. I am Namrata from Group 8, and I'll be presenting the topic of properties of convolution. And I have taken most of the content from Professor Gadre sir's lecture. And I am presenting this on behalf of Professor Sagar Rama, Professor Amit Yadav, and Professor Shashikant Khare. So what is discussed here is we are going to discuss about two properties, that is commutativity and associativity of convolution. So we are doing two main things in this lecture. First one is we are going to do formal derivation, and then we will see what are the things that we can understand from these properties for an LSI system. That is consequences of these properties on LSI system. So first, let us see what is commutative. As sir mentioned in his lecture, commutative is an operator is said to be commutative if you get the same result even after you interchange the operands. For example, here we have 1 plus 2, and on the right hand side I have interchanged the operands as 2 plus 1. So if I get the same result, it is said to be commutative. That is, addition is an operator which is said to be commutative, but subtraction is not commutative because when I interchange the operand, we don't get the same result. Similarly, what is meant by associative property? In associative property, you are not going to change the sequence of the operands, but you are going to group them differently. For example, here we are multiplying 1 into and 2 and 3 are grouped together. On the right hand side, 1 and 2 are grouped together. So the grouping of the operands are done differently, which gives us the same result, whereas the sequence of the operands are kept the same. Then it is said to be possessing associative property, that is multiplication is said to possess associative property. But division, as you see, 1 divided by 2 by 3, if I change it to 1 by 2 by 3, that is, I'm keeping the order same, but the grouping is different. I don't get the same answer on both sides. Then I say, since the answer is not same, it is not having associative property. So division is not associative. Now coming to signals and system domain, here we are considering two systems, both are LSI system, and let H1 of n be the impulse response of the first system, H2 of n be the impulse response of the second system. So here, if I interchange the two impulse responses, sorry, it should be convolution here. If I interchange the two responses, I will get the same result. So it is said to be commutative. Similarly, for associative, if I have three systems with impulse responses, H3 also coming into picture, I'm taking discrete. This is possible even for continuous domain. So if I have three systems and if I group them differently, I should get the same answer as the output. Then it is said to possess associative property. So coming to formal derivation, Professor Nandita Madam has already done it for commutativity for a signal. So I will just go very briefly through this. So if we have two discrete sequences, x of n and y of n, then what we are going to do is we are going to include a dummy variable, and we are going to see that x convolution y is same as 1 convolution x. So introducing a dummy variable, we can do the simplification and we will arrive at this equation. Similarly, for continuous domain, we have two signals x of t and y of t. We will get the same result for continuous domain as well after introducing a dummy variable and doing the simplification. I'm just going very briefly through this. Similarly, for associative property, if we consider discrete sequences, then as I mentioned earlier, you have to group it differently, and while grouping it differently, if we get the same result, then it is said to possess associative property. So here again, we are introducing dummy variables and we are doing the math and simplification. There is a slight complexity involved when we come to continuous variable signals. So in continuous variable signals, we have this d lambda and dA over here. And here we have to introduce a coordinate transformation. That is, as sir mentioned in his lecture, we have to introduce this Jacobian matrix. And we have to do the transformation and get the equation in terms of the other grouping. That is, if we have x conjugate x convolution y convolution z, we need to get the result as x convolution y convolution z. So for that, we will have this Jacobian introduced over here, and which, since the Jacobian of the transformation here gives us 1, then accordingly this d lambda and d alpha becomes d lambda 1 and d alpha 1. So this is just a derivation. So I'm just telling in brief what is happening over here. And after introducing these dummy variables and after introducing Jacobian of the transformation, we will be able to get the final equation where the grouping is done on the other way around. So this is a proof for showing that convolution is both commutative as well as associative. Now coming to what are the things that we can understand from these two properties. if we have two LSI systems, S1 and S2, connected in cascade, and H1 of n and H2 of n be the impulse responses of them respectively, then we can see that no matter what is the order of this arrangement, this has to be S2. Whatever is the order of the arrangement of the subsystems, the output does not change. So that is the basic understanding of commutative. So we are not going to get a different output even though we change the subsystems. So here we can conclude that the output actually depends only on the input and not on the order of the subsystem or the way in which S1, S2, S3 or other subsystems are connected. They can be connected in any way in cascade. The output remains the same. Similarly, what we understand from associative property? From associative property, we are grouping the two responses or the input separately. Here we have X as the input, H1, H2 as the impulse response. So if we group X and H1, we will get the same response for all N. So from associative property, what we can conclude is we can have an equivalent system where we can make one system by combining the two subsystems. So here we have H1 and H2. We can combine these two and then make it as one system, or we can combine these two and make it as one system, and it doesn't make any difference in the output. So this is just a brief about properties of convolution. So that's all I have to say about this property. But I also have some thought. I don't know if it is right or wrong. I want you to just give your feedback on this.
Very good.
Here I have used a circuit with two resistors, assuming that this is an ideal circuit where the input voltage does not have any harmonics and the resistance is not going to change depending on the temperature. All are ideal. In that case, can we consider the response current response as commutative?
What would you mean? What would you mean by the response being commutative here?
So here we have R1 and R2 as the resistors. So even though I interchange the resistors, if I consider this as a subsystem and this as another subsystem, even though I interchange the subsystems, the overall response is not going to change. So is this analogy right for a commutative property?
Well, in a way, yes, but you have to be careful how you define the input-output relationship. So, you have to be a little more precise on how you're defining the input-output relationship here. Which is the input to each resistor, which is the output. Yeah, so could you define that clearly?
So here current is the output and voltage is the input.
Okay.
So the output, which is current, remains the same even though if I change the way in which R1 and R2 are connected. I can connect R2 first and then R1.
Yes, yes.
Or I can connect R1 first and then R2.
Right.
The current is.
So, it's very clear that you can interchange the order of the resistors and the current will be the same. So that aspect of commutativity is absolutely correct. Now you will have to formulate the system formulation a little more carefully. Yeah. So if you do that, otherwise the idea is definitely there. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. Yeah. Yes.
I think you should take the voltage drop across R1 as one system and voltage drop across R2 as the another system. That is V1 and V2 is equal to VT, and if it is interchanged, then V2 plus V1 is also equal to VT.
That is right. That's right. So in fact, here this is actually using the commutativity of addition in some sense.
Yes, sir.
So this actually, when you do it like that, you're really using the commutativity of addition of the two voltages, right?
Okay.
So,
yes, sir.
So if you want to formulate the system level, that you must define the input-output relationship of each system more carefully.
Okay, sir. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well done. Very well. Nice. Yeah, very nice.
So that's all I have regarding that topic. But I want some feedback.
I mean, I can see that, the parallel combination, Well, you see,
Systems and cascading.
Parallel combinations, but then, you could,
Actually, sir, this should be R1, R plus, sir. This
right. It should be R1
this should be
plus
R plus,
R2, yeah.
plus
That
R.
way, right. Because otherwise, parallel combinations are associated. Isn't it?
Yes,
Associated.
Yes, parallel
this
combinations
is series parallel.
Yeah, series parallel. Then, of course, there are two different operators there, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Then you can't interchange the order of the operators. That's what you're saying.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay. In
Okay,
fact,
sir.
I want to also sound a word of warning here. I remember in the morning we discussed RLC. I said that, as an example of commutativity, you could have two RLC networks.
Yes, sir.
However, we have to be careful. The two
Okay, sir.
RLC networks must be separated by a buffer.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if you interchange the order of the two RLC networks, the overall transfer function may not remain the same because there is a loading. You see,
Yes.
each RLC network loads the previous one. So therefore,
Yes.
when you interchange two RLC networks, you must put a buffer in between. That is
Yes.
important. So that's an important thing about which I forgot to mention in the morning. I thought I should correct right now. Very well presented, Professor Namrata Pai. Very nicely presented. So do we have any points of discussion on her presentation? Okay, I think, yes.
This is Meenakshi,
Yes,
Meenakshi
yes.
Atre.
Yes.
Yes, one point is like as ma'am represented R1 and then R2, no? So
Yes.
instead of that, same system could have been represented with H1 and H2. And then that could have been two systems cascaded, and then commutative law can be proved with the help of that. So
Yes.
I1 R1 as H1 system and I2 R2 as H2 systems.
Yeah.
And
Now,
then
what I
that
was
could
saying
be
is, even then, she has to be careful to define her input-output relation properly.
right.
The input-output
Okay.
relation must be properly defined. That then it will be correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. So well done. Now we have group. Yes. Any other observations on her presentation? All right. If not, then we go on to group 9 now. So group 9, who is going to make a presentation? No volunteers from group 9 at all. Okay, while group 9 comes forward, group 10. Group 10, I think, has absconded today as well. Well, all right. So if we don't have volunteers from either group 9 or group 10, then we should move on to the next cycle, third cycle. Now, in the third cycle, we are moving into more difficult topics. We are moving into topics which relate to the Fourier transform and the transform domain. So here we should pay careful attention.
Sir, pardon me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I'm from group 1,
Yes.
and we are a little bit late, so we could not present. So can we present now?
Yes. No, we are just starting.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I was just saying that in the third cycle, now we are moving into a different kind of representation of systems and signals. So here we have to be careful to observe how our faculty colleagues present this different domain of representation, how they inspire it. We should be careful. Because before a student also we must inspire the new way of representing signals and systems in a way that makes it clear why we are moving there. Is that right? So let's begin with group 1. Yeah, who will be presenting in group 1? Very good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Dr. Asasiri Pradhan, and I'm going to represent group 1.
Very good.
So, good afternoon, all. This is a slide of group 1, and myself, Dr. Asasiri Pradhan. My group members are Chandrakant Pol, Ramachandra Reddy Konda, Seema Diwan, and Lekha Das Madam. We have combiningly made these slides of our topic is sinusoidal signals, and they have given me the privilege to present these slides, because it will become very hodgepodge in this medium, in this online medium, for presentation of these slides by more than one people, because we are not present at one place. That's why I have taken this opportunity for presenting the slides of group 1, and our topic is sinusoidal signal. So we are going to the basic of sinusoidal signal, and we have taken representation from we have followed the slides of sir, and also from various books, and of course from the internet. So what is sinusoidal signal? Sinusoidal signal is it is everywhere. Sinusoidal signal is there. It is the presentation of in nature. It is one product of nature. That means in the music, sinusoidal signal is there. In our speech, sinusoidal signal is there. In EEG or encephalography, that sinusoidal signal is there. So in our speech, like everywhere, like this picture shows that we all are acquainted with all these systems. So everywhere sinusoidal signals are there. So the last systems they are just characterized by sinusoids, all the sinusoids, like in the music, in the EEG, and the speech, everywhere the sinusoidal signals are there. And sinusoidal signal system is just a combination of some sinusoids. So sinusoid means like this picture is showing, these are the combination of all these type of signals. So that means what is sinusoidal signal? How they look like? These are the periodic signal, like it is sinusoidal, like sine wave. It is one periodic signal, sine wave, cosine wave, then triangular wave. These are all the sinusoidal signal. Then if somebody asks that sinusoidal, then what will be non-sinusoidal? What is the difference between sinusoidal and non-sinusoidal signals? What are the how we compare between these two? What is sinusoidal and how they compare between each other? Now both are periodic signal. Sinusoidal signal, non-sinusoidal signal, both can be periodic signal, and there in both cases cycle may be there. And what is cycle? Now cycle is a measurement between 2 points between same amplitude and varying in same direction. And both type of signal may have peak also. Then what is peak? Now peak is the measurement of from 0 axis to maximum positive or negative value. So that means both cases we have this period, may have period, both have cycle, both have peak. But what is the difference between the two? Then as this picture shows, that the sinusoidal signal is symmetrical, whereas non-sinusoidal signal is non-symmetrical. Like some example of sinusoidal signal are square wave, sine wave, and it can be a complex wave also. And this is the staircase waveform, is also a sinusoidal signal. But in case of square wave, which are usually used in digital electronic circuit, and non-sinusoidal. Sawtooth wave, which is usually used in control circuitries, are non-sinusoidal, and pulse wave are usually used in our power electronics circuits. These are all non-sinusoidal because these are non-symmetrical. Okay, then how sinusoidal waveform are generated? So this is the concept that we all have gone through in our basic electrical and machine. So how sinusoidal waveform is generated? When a current, when a conductor is placed in a magnetic field, or when a conductor is rotated in a magnetic field, then a sinusoidal signal is generated like this. Okay, what is the it is the basic rule. Okay, so how it is generated? Now when this conductor is rotated, that means when it is in 0 degree, when it is in 0 degree, so see in this the last figure, when it is in 0 degree, then our signal generated, which signal, the signal generated here in this way. So the signal generated here and come here will be here, and then if it is a closed circuit, then current flows in this way. So it will be in this direction. Okay, so then our magnitude will be 0. Okay, like here, when it is 0, so its magnitude will be 0. And when it rotated in this way, then our signal is in this way, its amplitude will increase until it reaches 90 degree. It will become maximum, and when it again move from this side to this side, then its magnitude will reduce and becomes 0 at 180 degree. And again, when it rotated in this way onto 270 degree, the direction of the current will opposite, because this will come to this side. So the direction of the current will be opposite, and opposite maximum it will reach at 270 degree. It will opposite maximum, and at 360 degree it will again become 0. Okay, in this way it is a continuous process. In this, when it is rotated, it is a continuous process. Okay, and therefore a continuous sinusoidal waveform is generated. So how we mathematically represent this sinusoidal signal? Now it is like this. Okay, so when at this point, so this point is if we compare it with time period or with phasor degree, theta, then, and this is our amplitude, then at this point, suppose my instantaneous value of this waveform is E1, then it will be this is the maximum. Okay, since it is a sinusoidal signal, so sine wave, na? So here the waveform is like this. B, it will be B max sine theta. Okay, this, from this value also we can prove that it is coming sine theta. So at this point it is E1, so Vm sine theta equal to 0. Then at this point E2, so suppose the instantaneous value is E2, then it will be Vm sine 180 degree is sine 90 degree will come plus Vm, and at here it will be again 0 degree, and here it will be again minus Vm, again here at 360 degree it will be 0 volt. So by this combination we are getting that it is following this relationship, Vt is equal to V max sine theta. So therefore we have got a generalized equation of sinusoidal signal, that is xt is equal to a cos omega 0 t plus phi, where xt is the instantaneous value, a is the maximum, or it is the amplitude, and it can be sine theta or this a cos omega 0 t plus phi is also another kind of sinusoidal, where phi is the phase shift. This is also one representation of sinusoidal signal. So in sinusoidal signal, if we generalize the sinusoidal signal, we have got 3 basic attributes. What are they? Now one is frequency, another one is amplitude, another one is sorry, not 3, we have 4 attributes, sorry, my mistake. 4 attributes. One is frequency, amplitude, phase, and wavelength. So what is wavelength? Now from this side to this side is called wavelength, which is usually represented as lambda. Okay, so from one similar point, so what is the similar magnitude? From that the phase difference will be the amplitude is same. And what is amplitude? Now this portion is called amplitude, from our 0 reference, this from the reference line to the maximum point. length is called amplitude. This is also amplitude. This is also amplitude. And in case of sinusoidal signal, the amplitude must be same for both positive and negative case. Must be same. In case of a ideal sinusoidal signal. And so this is called the frequency, amplitude. Okay. And what will be phase? So this is called the phase. This one is the this is called the phase. Okay. And similarly, what will be the wavelength? This is called the wavelength. And frequency, it is from one point to another point. Suppose from here to here, it is called one cycle. Okay. So it is completion of one similar wave, and in the negative wave another similar wave. This is called half cycle. And this is positive half cycle, this is negative half cycle, and combination of two cycle will become a one cycle. And this one cycle, the period for one cycle is called the time period, and frequency is equal to 1 by time period, which is Hertz. Okay, so the uniqueness of sinusoidal signal is that when in a LTI system, that means linear time invariant system, if we insert or if you give sinusoidal signal as input, then output will be sinusoidal signal only. Then some properties of sinusoidal signal. First one is the equivalence signal. The equivalence property it means then it is a property for which equivalence means a property for which it must be reflective, symmetric, and transitive. Then what is reflective? Reflective means when this is the x equal to x, so it reflects each other. Then what is symmetric? Symmetric means if x equal to y, then y equal to x. This is the symmetric property. Okay. Then what is transitive property? Transitive means when x equal to y and y equal to z, then x must be equal to z. So these three property must be there for our equivalence. So our sinusoidal signal must follow this equivalence property. Then periodic means it must be look like a period, like this is a positive half cycle, negative half cycle, one full cycle, or a period. So this is one period, this is second period, then a third period. In this way it must be periodic. Then another property is odd and even. Like what is odd and even? Like this I am explaining with trigonometric function. Now even function mean in f minus x equal to fx, and what is odd function? Then f minus x equal to minus fx. So in case of even function, this, then odd function this. So in case of sinusoidal signal also, sine minus x must be sine x, odd function. But cosine and this signal will be it will follow the even function. And then it is sinusoidal wave, sine wave, it will follow this odd function. These are necessary in case of Fourier transformation, like in case of our harmonic calculation. So another property is additive. Suppose we have two signals S1 and S2, and we can add these two signals. But the signal, suppose the signal S1 and S2 are like this, then we can add these two signals, and the sub signal will look like this. Then derivative. So we can apply to the signal derivative rule can be applied to these signals. So if we have a sinusoidal signal like this, then its derivative signal will be a cosine wave only, like this. Okay. These are some of the property. Now sinusoids as rotating complex. We can represent this sinusoidal as a rotating complex also. Then what will be our representation? It will be A plus JB. It is a complex function. We usually write like this: A plus JB, where J is equal to root over -1. We know these things, and it can be represented like this: A into cos omega t plus j sin omega t, where A is equal to this A is equal to root over of A square plus B square root over, and cos omega t plus j sin omega t, which can also be written as A e to the power j omega t. So this is all about that we have made. Thank you. Any question?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Professor Asheshwari Pradhan. So I appreciate how you have brought out the importance of sinusoids and discussed the properties in detail. Now, a few comments about the presentation which I have. One is that you very beautifully brought out the importance of the sinusoid initially by using.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So I was saying, you very beautifully explained the importance of a sinusoid initially, and you brought out the physical significance of how sinusoids are generated. That was a very good thing. I appreciated that. I felt towards the later part of your presentation, the properties that you were talking about of sinusoids, I mean, the representation, these things are well known to the high school student. Is that right? I mean, for example, when a person comes into engineering, he would be well aware of some of these properties of trigonometric functions. So one need not spend so much of time on them. Is that fine?
Okay, sir. Okay,
yeah?
sir.
Okay. Any other comments on the presentation from participants? Okay, so let's congratulate. Yes, Person. Yes.
Madam, during regarding periodicity, you could have said that the time from after which the signal repeats its pattern. That is the periodicity. That is
okay. Thanks, madam. Thanks for the comment. I've forgotten that. Sir, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Right. So periodic. One point which you can bring out is that when you give a periodic input to a shift invariant system, the output is periodic with the same period.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can prove that when you give a periodic input to a shift invariant system, the output is periodic with the same period. Why? Because if I shift the periodic signal by the period, it remains the same. So that means, and if a system is shift invariant, if you shift the input, the output is shifted by the same amount. That means the output must be periodic with the same period. So that's one property. When a system is shift invariant, then a periodic input results in a periodic output. So in some sense, using periodic signals as a basis to represent signals is attractive for shift invariant systems. Yes?
Okay. Thank you for the comment.
Very good. So well done. Well done.